Some days feel the same. You wake up, work, come home, and everything blurs together. Forget the small stuff because it doesn't matter. But then there's a day that does matter. It's a day that sticks. It's a day that cuts your life into before and after. For me, that day was a sunny Tuesday. I learned the hum of electricity isn't always harmless. Sometimes it's a warning. That was the day everything I knew ended. I was in my early 20s, a field service worker for an energy company. I was proud of my job. It felt important, like we were part of what kept the world running. That day started like any other. The sun was out. My best friend was laughing in the seat next to me as we drove to a job site. It wasn't just my coworker. He was my brother. I had no idea that in a few hours, everything would be shattered. I had no idea I'd be the only one to watch him burn alive. When you're 22, you feel invincible. The world is an open road, and you've got the keys to a fast car. That's how it was for me and Liam. We were kids. He was 23. We met in training and just clicked. He had this goofy, infectious laugh and could find something funny in the most boring parts of the job. He was the kind of guy who'd notice you were having a bad day and just show up with your favorite coffee, no questions asked. He talked about his girlfriend Sarah, constantly. He was saving for a ring. He had plans. We both did. Our job. It was complex. We were energy field service workers. Basically, we were the guys they sent when the big heavy-duty electrical equipment went down. The stuff that powers everything. Generators, switchgears, transformers. That was our office. It was a world of humming metal cabinets, the clean, sharp smell of ozone, and the constant, gut-level knowledge that you were inches away from something that could kill you in a blink. But we were trained. We were careful. It had protocols for everything. Lockout, tagout, personal protective equipment, safety briefings that never seemed to end. We learned to respect the power we worked with. You get a sixth sense for it, a feeling in the air, a tiny change in the sound of a machine, a gut instinct that tells you when to back off. The work was demanding, but it felt good. There was real pride in fixing a tough problem and bringing the lights back on, and there was the camaraderie. When you have a high-risk job, you build bonds that are hard to explain. You're not just co-workers. You're each other's lifeline. You double-check their work. You watch their back. Liam was my guy. We spent hundreds of hours in that truck, driving between sites, talking about everything and nothing. The cars we wanted. The places we'd travel. The lives we wanted to build. He knew things about me nobody else did, and I knew things about him. It was a friendship forged in shared risk. I remember this one time. We were on a call in the middle of winter. It was freezing, the wind was howling, and we were trying to get power back to a small town that had been dark for hours. We were cold, tired, and getting pissed off. Liam, seeing me getting down, just starts telling the worst jokes you've ever heard, one after another, each one more groan-worthy than the last. But he just kept going, his nose red from the cold, this huge, stupid grin on his face, until I finally cracked up. That was him. Could find a little light in the darkest places. We got the power back on just as the sun was setting. Driving back, seeing all the houses lit up, we felt like heroes. It's just two young guys doing our job, feeling like we were on top of the world. It's that feeling, that sense of normal, that makes what happened next so impossible to accept. It's the before that I cling to, because the after is just fire and ashdod. The change was subtle at first. A new project lead, a guy named Mark, got assigned to our region. He was older, maybe late 40s, and had a reputation for getting things done under budget and ahead of schedule. Management loved him. The moment he showed up, the whole vibe changed. The easy rhythm we had was gone, replaced by this constant grinding urgency. The focus went from do it right to just get it done. Mark was a master of a specific kind of pressure. He never yelled. It was quieter, more insidious. It was the way he'd pointedly look at his watch while you were running a safety check. It was the you guys, sure you need all that. When we were setting up a lockout tagout, it was him casually mentioning another crew finished a similar job in half the time. He made you feel like being cautious was a weakness, like following the rules was an inconvenience. Liam and I started talking about it in the truck. Is it me, Or is Mark a little pushy? I asked one day. A little, Liam shot back. The guy acts like every second we spend on safety is coming straight out of his own pocket. We tried to ignore it. We were pros. We knew the rules. We weren't going to let some desk jockey rush us into a mistake. But the pressure was always there, slowly chipping away at our confidence. He'd question our judgment on small stuff, making us second-guess ourselves. He was planting seeds of doubt not in the safety rules, but in our right to stand by them. Then came the generator project. It was a big one, upgrading old backup generators for a data center. The work was complicated, and some of it was right on the edge of our certification level. A few of the tasks on the work order were things we'd only ever seen senior specialists do. Guys with 10 years more experience than us. I remember bringing it up to him in the shop. We were looking over the schematics. Mark, I said, trying to be respectful. Liam and I were looking over the data center job. Some of this, specifically the mods inside the primary control cabinet. It's outside our qualifications. We're not certified for that kind of invasive work on this model. Mark didn't even look up from his screen. It's just following a diagram, guys. It's not rocket science. The senior guys are tied up for the next 3 weeks. Can't wait. The client is breathing down my neck. Liam stepped in. With all due respect, Mark, it's not about being smart enough to follow a diagram. It's about what happens if something goes wrong. We haven't been trained on the failure points of this unit. We don't know its quirks. That's why the specialist certification exists. Mark finally spun in his chair and gave us this long, hard stare. It was a look that was somehow both disappointed and dismissive. Look, he said, lowering his voice like he was letting us in on a secret. I know you guys are good. You're the best young team I've got. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you could handle it. I'm putting my trust in you. Don't make me regret that. And there it was. The trap. He wasn't ordering us. He was trusting us. He was turning our valid safety concern into a personal failing. Making it about letting him down, we pushed back again, harder this time. We explained the risks, the specific rules we'd be breaking. We practically begged him to get a specialist, even if it meant a delay. His face hardened. Fine, he said, his voice ice cold. You want to stand around for 3 weeks while I explain? To my bosses that my best team is refusing to work. You think that'll look good on your records? Think about your careers? You want to move up? Or do you want to be the guys who always say no, who can't handle a little challenge? Just left us standing there. The choice wasn't about safety anymore. He'd twisted it into ambition versus stagnation, obedience versus insubordination. We were in our early 20s, and we were ambitious. The thought of being labeled difficult was terrifying. We talked about it for hours that night, going back and forth. We knew it was wrong. Every bit of our training was screaming at us to refuse. But we were trapped between a very real physical danger and the very real threat to our careers that Mark had created. We felt powerless. Looking back, I know we should have gone over his head, called the safety supervisor, walked off the job. But when you're young, and a guy in charge is telling you your future is on the lines get blurry. In the end, with a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, we caved. We agreed to do it. It was a decision made under pressure and intimidation. It was the biggest mistake of my life. It would cost Liam everything. The morning of the accident felt scarily normal. The sun was bright, the sky a deep, perfect blue. One of those crisp, beautiful days. I picked Liam up like I always did. He came jogging out of his apartment, coffee in one hand, lunchbox in the other, a big grin on his face. Morning, sunshine, he said, sliding into the truck. Ready to go tame the beast? His good mood was a punch in the gut. I'd barely slept. The conversation with Mark just kept replaying in my head. I tried to smile, as I'll ever be. The drive to the data center was pretty quiet. Liam had the radio on some classic rock station, drumming his fingers on the dashboard. He was talking about his weekend plans, a hike he and Sarah were going to take. He was so full of life, so completely in that moment. I was a million miles away, my mind stuck on that generator, on the diagrams, on the feeling that we were walking into something we shouldn't. You all right, man? He asked, catching my silence. You seem tense. Just this job, I admitted. Still don't feel right about it. Liam's smile faded a bit. He sighed. I know, me neither. But look, we'll just be extra careful. Let's take it slow, step by step. We'll have our gear on, everything denergized and locked out. We'll double-check everything. We'll be fine. Got each other's backs, right? Right, I said, trying to believe him, always. We got to the site and made our way to the generator room. It was a sterile, concrete box in the basement, filled with rows of big, gray metal cabinets. It was cool down there, and the air had that familiar electrical smell: metal, plastic, ozone. We started our prep just like 100 times before. We went through the lockout to Gao with painful precision, tested every connection to be sure there was zero power. Put on our PPE, the heavy flame-retardant suits, the thick gloves, the face shields. The gear is bulky and hot, but it's your armor. We thought it would protect us. We opened the first cabinet. Inside was a maze of wires and bus bars. We had the work order, the diagram spread out on a table nearby. The first hour, it went okay. We were communicating, calling out every step, checking each other's moves. The anxiety started to fade, replaced by the focus of the job. Maybe Liam was right. Maybe we could do this. We were about halfway through the main task, a delicate rewiring job deep inside the cabinet, when the bulky suit and the heat really started getting to me. I was sweating hard, my mouth was dry, and I was feeling a little lightheaded. "Hey," I said, my voice muffled by the shield. "I'm gonna run to the truck and grab some water. My bottle's empty. You good for a minute?" Liam looked up. "Yeah, man. No worries. Take your time. I'll just finish tidying up these connections here." "All right, be right back," I said. I pulled off my gloves and face shield, setting them on a clean spot. The cool air on my sweaty face was a huge relief. I walked out of the generator room, my boots echoing in the empty hall. I remember looking back at him one last time. He was hunched over, totally focused on his work. My best friend, doing a dangerous job because we'd been backed into a corner. But in that moment, all I was thinking was how thirsty I was. I walked down the long concrete hallway, pushed open the heavy stairwell door, and started up toward the loading dock. The world was still normal. The sun was still shining. Sarah was still expecting Liam to come home. I was just a guy getting water. I had no idea I was walking away from the last moment of peace I'd ever know. I was halfway to the truck, my hand reaching for the handle, when the world tore itself apart. It wasn't a sound you just hear with your ears. You feel it in your bones. It started as a low, guttural, deeply wrong buzz. It's a sound I knew instantly. A sound my training screamed was wrong. It was the sound of uncontrolled electricity of energy going where it shouldn't. It was a noise that seemed to suck all the air out of the world for half a second. Then came the bang. It wasn't just a bang. It was a concussion. It was a thunderous, deafening boom that slammed into me. The air pressure changed so fast it felt like a giant had punched me in the chest. My ears screamed with a high-pitched, painful shriek that drowned out everything. And then, under that ringing, I heard the screaming. It was a scream of pure agony, a sound no human should ever make or ever hear, and I knew the voice. My blood ran ice cold. My heart didn't just drop. It felt like it was ripped out of my chest. Liam, time twisted. The world went into slow motion, but my body was moving faster than I knew it could. I didn't decide to run. My feet were just moving, sprinting back the way I came. My mind just a vortex of no, 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 no. A silent prayer to a universe that had already made its decision. I threw open the stairwell door and scrambled down, my boots slipping on the concrete. The smell hit me first, a toxic perfume of horror. The sharp stink of vaporized metal, the choking smell of burnt plastic, and underneath it all, something else. Something foul, organic, and sickeningly sweet. The smell of burning flesh. I burst into the generator room, and my brain just broke. The room was a nightmare. The generator cabinet was black, warped, its door blown off the hinges. Thick, black smoke filled the air, burning my eyes. And in the middle of it all, where Liam was just standing, was a figure. A human-shaped inferno. He was completely on fire. The fire wasn't just on him. It was eating him. It wrapped around his body like a living thing, a roaring, crackling shroud of orange and yellow. He was a human torch. His screams weren't words anymore, just raw animal sounds of a pain I can't imagine, mixed with the horrifying crackle and pop of the fire itself. For a second I was frozen. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My brain refused to process what I was seeing. This can't be real. This can't be Liam. But then the training kicked in, a tiny, rational thought in a sea of panic. Fire blanket. Trucked. I spun and ran again, my lungs on fire. I fumbled with the truck door, my hands shaking so bad I could barely grab the handle. I ripped the emergency fire blanket out of its case and sprinted back. Every second was an eternity. The run back was a blur. The smell was stronger now, overwhelming. I could hear his screams getting weaker, turning into moans. I got back to the room, and the sight was even worse. He was staggering, his movements jerky, and he was clawing at his face, trying to put out the fire. He was ripping away melting pieces of his own skin. The image of him tearing his own face off is burned into my eyelids. It's the ghost that visits me in the middle of the night. I ran straight at him, threw the heavy blanket over him, and tackled him to the ground to smother the flames. The heat was immense, even through the blanket. I could feel it through my gloves. I pushed down, rolling him, trying to cut off the oxygen. The crackling sound slowly died, replaced by a hissing, sickening sizzle. The screams had stopped. I pulled the blanket back just enough to see his face, or what was left. It was a ruin. Skin was gone, melted, and fused with the black charred remains of his face shield. He was unconscious. His breathing was a shallow, ragged rasp. His body was a patchwork of horrific burns. The fire was out, but the horror was just beginning. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers slick with sweat and God knows what else. I punched. And the number for my supervisor. My voice a broken wreck. Arc blast, I choked out. Liam, he's... Oh God, send everyone. Send an ambulance. Now. He burned. He burned alive. I don't remember what else I said. I just remember kneeling on that cold concrete floor next to the smoldering body of my best friend, the stench of death and electricity filling my lungs, listening to the echo of his screams in the ringing silence. The world went from normal to hell in the time it takes to get a bottle of water, and I was the only one who saw it. The weight of that memory crashed down on me, and I knew, the certainty that chilled me to my soul, that my life would never be the same. The minutes between the call and the sirens were the longest of my life. The generator room was dead quiet now, except for the faint hum of the other machines and my own ragged breathing. The air was thick with the smell. I couldn't get it out of my nose. I still can't. I tried to remember my first aid training. I gently rolled Liam into a recovery position, my hands shaking as I touched what was left of his body. His skin was a disaster. Charred black in some places, waxy and terrifyingly white in others. It didn't look human anymore. I remember talking to him. I don't know if he could hear me. He was unconscious, his life hanging by a thread. But I talked anyway. I knelt beside him, my hand hovering over his shoulder, too scared to touch him, to cause more pain. "Hang on, Liam," I whispered, my voice cracking. "Just hang on, man. Help is coming. They're coming. You're gonna be okay. Just hold on." I said it over and over like a prayer, was trying to convince myself more than him. The distant wail of sirens was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. When the paramedics and firefighters burst in, their faces were a mix of professional focus and pure shock. They swarmed around Liam, cutting away what was left of his clothes. Trying to find a vein for an IV, I was pushed to the side. I just stood against the wall, numb, watching them. A firefighter came over and asked if I was hurt. I couldn't answer. I just stared at Liam. I felt like I was watching a movie. My mind had put up a wall to stop from taking in a reality that was too monstrous to absorb. Asterisk, asterisk, they got him stable enough to move. As they carried him out on a gurney, I saw his hand, one of the few places that wasn't completely charred. It was so still. I thought about all the times I'd seen that hand holding a wrench or giving me a high five. Now, it was just lifeless. A police officer started asking me questions. "What happened? Did you see it?" I tried to answer, but the words were a jumble. The buzz, the bang, the screaming, the fire. The more I said it, the more real it became, and the wall in my mind started to crack. I started shaking and couldn't stop. My supervisor showed up. He saw the room, saw me, and his face went white. Put a hand on my shoulder, but I flinched. I didn't want to be touched. I just wanted to rewind time. The next few hours were a blur of hospital waiting rooms. The smell of antiseptic couldn't cover the stench of smoke that was stuck to my clothes, my hair, my skin. I gave a statement to an OSHA investigator. I watched Liam's parents and Sarah arrive, their faces full of a hope that I knew was a lie. How do you tell a mother or a fiancé what you saw? How do you describe the sound of their son burning? Can't, so I just sat there, hollowed out. The doctors came out. Their faces were grim. They used low clinical words, severe thermal injuries. 80 to 90% of his body, third-degree burns, multiple organ failure. The words were like bullets, each one shattering another piece of hope. They said the arc blast, which happens when electricity vaporizes metal and expands it faster than sound, did more than just burn him. The concussive force caused massive internal injuries. The extreme heat, which can be hotter than the surface of the sun, it's basically cooked him from the inside out. The doctor looked at me with tired pity in his eyes. The blast hit his face directly, he said, confirming what I already knew. We believe he's lost his senses of sight, hearing, smell, and taste. The burns are so deep, much of his sense of touch is gone. He took a deep breath. The lack of oxygen to the brain, it's caused catastrophic damage. Right now, his heart is beating. But the person you knew, he's not there anymore. He's in a persistent vegetative state. A vegetative state. The words just hung there in the sterile air. Liam, the guy who loved bad jokes and hiking, who was saving for a ring, was gone. All that was left was a body, kept alive by machines. A living tomb. My best friend was gone, and I was standing 100 feet away when it happened. 100 feet, the distance between a normal life and a living hell. The weight of those 100 feet of that bottle of water settled on my soul, and I knew I would carry it for the rest of my life. CTA section, this isn't just a story. It's the reality I live with every single day. Liam's life wasn't lost in a freak accident. It was stolen. It was stolen by pressure, by a culture that put a deadline before a human life, and by the silence of two young men who were too scared to say no and make it stick. These kinds of accidents aren't rare. Every day people go to work in high-risk jobs, and they count on safety procedures to protect them. But sometimes that system fails, and the consequences are permanent. I'm telling this story because I have to believe something good can come from this horror, that my friend's sacrifice wasn't for nothing. If you work in any industry where safety is a factor, construction, electrical manufacturing, anything, please, listen to your gut. Never let anyone, no matter who they are, pressure you into cutting a corner or doing something you're not qualified for. Your life is not worth a deadline. It's not worth a promotion, and if you see something, say something. Be the difficult one. Stop the job. You're not just protecting yourself. You're protecting the person next to you. You're protecting their family and their future. Please, share this. If this story can stop one person from going through what my friend went through, if it can save one family from this kind of grief, then telling it was worth it. Don't let Liam's story be just another tragic accident. Let it be a warning. Let it be a reason to change. Conclusion, it's been years. Liam is still alive, in a way. He's in a long-term care facility in the vegetative state the doctors described. Sarah, his fiancée, eventually had to move on with her life. His parents visit him every week, sitting by the bedside of the shell of their son. Their lives are also a permanent after. And me? I have my own scars. They're not on my skin, but they're deep. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD. For a long time, I couldn't sleep without nightmares, vivid replays of the event. The sound of the buzz, the bang, the smell, the sight of him on fire. I'd wake up shouting, covered in sweat. During the day, any loud noise, the smell of a barbecue, even a flickering light could send me right back to that concrete room. The guilt is a constant companion. It's a heavy coat I can never take off. I replayed that day over and over. What if I'd been more forceful with Mark? What if I'd refused the job no matter what? What if I hadn't gone for water? What if I had been standing next to him? Sometimes in my darkest moments, I think that would have been a kindness. Survivor's guilt is a poison that makes you question why you were the one who walked away. I never worked in that field again. I couldn't. The thought of being near high-voltage equipment fills me with a fear I can't control. The accident didn't just end my career. It rewired my brain. It changed everything. We think we're in control, that if we just follow the rules, we'll be okay. I learned that it only takes one person cutting a corner. It's one moment of pressure to shatter that illusion. I've been through years of therapy to even be able to talk about this. To say his name without breaking down? Telling this story is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm doing it for him. For Liam, because he doesn't have a voice anymore. So I have to be his. No job is worth your life. We go to work to live, not to die there. Remember that. Cherish the normal days, the boring routines, the quiet moments. Because in the blink of an eye, in the space of a single, awful sound, it can all be taken away. And all you're left with are the ghosts and the ringing silence of the after.